Greetings, fellow visitors. This is Upgrade Terminal, a Monolith fan cast. I'm Malachi.
And I'm Nick. Welcome back to the facility.
Nick, before we get into things, how was your week?
Well, for the most part, my week was not very eventful. Not a lot happened, although one little tidbit I did get to enjoy is that my mom has been getting into making homemade bread recently.
That's
And
wonderful.
she's really getting the technique down. She's getting better at dialing things in, all the proportions, all the timings. It's quite an involved process, but
For sure.
she's really getting it down, and the end result is we have lots of tasty bread, and it's honestly a real delight to have that.
Yeah, the end result being lots of tasty bread is always a great end result.
hmm
What kind of bread is she making?
I think something along the lines of like sort of breadsticks,
Oh, okay.
just like small, not too long pieces of bread. I'm not entirely sure if they have a proper name. Just think breadsticks, but like actually homemade breadsticks, and you're there.
That sounds delicious. Did you dip them in anything?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Well, let
What
us
ab-
know what you end up dipping them in.
I will. What about you? What's your week been like?
My week went by really quickly, but also kind of uneventful.
hmm
But the biggest thing for me right now, I'm wearing a brand new pair of shorts, which might not sound like a big thing, but I have not bought a new pair of shorts in probably at least 7 or 8 years. And I don't have a lot of shorts to begin with. This year, I was like, you know what? I need a nice pair of shorts.
hmm
REI was having a sale in the US, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. So I bought myself a nice, like, thin and light pair of shorts. It's wonderful. I'm very excited to have it for the summer. Should probably buy more than one though.
Yeah. I'm not a shorts person myself, but there do come certain points in the year where like this really is the best thing I should have right now.
Yeah, exactly. I'm usually a pants guy, but when I can't fight it anymore, when it gets really hot, it's like, all right, I'll break out the shorts. Today, we're going to be discussing some of our headcanons regarding the visitors. And it's really important to note that this is not a debate, right, Nick?
Yeah, the point of this episode is not to come to a conclusion and determine which one of these is the correct interpretation and which ones are incorrect. This is just, as everything we do in this podcast, it is theories, it is speculation, it is discussion. It is not about arriving to a conclusion that we must defend.
Yes. And there's three different common headcanons, if you will, that we're going to talk about today. We'll
hmm
start with the first one, which is basically imagining that Null and D13 and all the ships have pilots.
Yep.
One thing that makes Nick and I different, and something I've always enjoyed seeing Nick expound upon, is the idea that there are pilots piloting Null and D13. So, Nick, this headcanon differs from mine, so I want to ask you, what is compelling to you about imagining that they have pilots?
Firstly, is that I guess I just I just like people in a sense. I like humans. I like, for instance, personification. I like the concept of taking something that is non-human and how would you convey that in a human way?
Uh-huh.
And for me, sort of the easiest way to apply that to this game would be to say, well, if these are ships, well, ships kind of by definition require to be piloted or driven or navigated by someone, a pilot of some kind. So from there comes this idea of like, well, these are ships with people inside.
Mm-hmm.
That is sort of I mean, to an extent, this is just what I would like to be true. I think this is a neat idea, so I'm like, yeah, why not?
Mm-hmm. there have been a lot of interpretations, artistic interpretations of what the pilots would look like.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone that's been on the Monolith Discord will probably know that because there are a lot of really cool interpretations pinned
Mm-hmm.
in one of the channels there. So I highly suggest you check that out if you haven't. But is there a specific pilot that you've spent more time imagining what they're like or what their interests are, Nick? I know you've written about Null and D13.
I have, yeah, but as a writer, when I'm writing those, I'm kind of taking advantage of the fact that I don't really have to physically describe them.
Mm-hmm.
I am more interested in describing how they feel and how they are interacting with the events as opposed to what do they physically look like.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, one of my friends, uh, Lilac or Taylor, as you might know them, has come up with certain designs that have been developed over time and have kind of solidified into sort of a set of designs. And I
Mm-hmm.
tend to go with those because they're my friend, and I think they did some really cool designs.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the ones that I will generally default to. Though, again, there's no right or wrong interpretation. In
Yeah.
fact, kind of what I like about it is that if you imagine that there is a person inside it, you can kind of make anything you want with that because there's no restriction about what they must look like. You can put anything you want onto it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, that's cool. That means like Lilac's interpretation, you've kind of taken their interpretation and made it part of your headcanon.
Yeah, essentially. And there is one final point I want to say, which is
Mm-hmm.
that part of the reason why I tend to stick to this idea of them being pilots is because, in a sense, it allows me to sort of think of the actual players in the community, the people who are actually playing the game,
Mm-hmm.
as they are pilots of the ships. They are literally taking the ships through the facility, and sort of I like to
Okay.
imagine them that way. It's like we are all pilots taking our ships down there.
Oh, I love that. We're all fellow pilots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that thought.
Right. So that's kind of the headcanon that I sort of adhere to.
Mm-hmm.
Malachi, tell us about what's yours.
So for me, um, I like to imagine them as sentient ships. So in other words,
Mm-hmm.
ships that have no pilots. They are piloted by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, why? I mean, I think, on pause screens, you'll see Noel drinking a cup of coffee, D13 sipping on that orange juice. Um, that probably started me down that road, but I've always been kind of attracted to the idea of sentient ships. And when I was preparing for this episode, Nick, I was actually thinking back, what is it that made me kind of attached to this idea of sentient ships? And I came up with two movies. I'm a big movie person, so throughout this podcast, you might hear me reference movies every once in a while. But Flubber was a movie I watched when I was a kid. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
super good movie. I did rewatch it.
How was it?
It was not very good. I wouldn't recommend it. Stars Robin Williams. It's a remake of like an old TV show, I think, and this guy that invents the super bouncy substance. Anyway, the important part of this, though, is that there is a robot that this inventor creates called Weibo, and she is just adorable. It's this flying little robot, not necessarily a ship per se, and she's kind of in love with the inventor. And there is a part in the film where, spoilers, she gets hit, she gets destroyed, and as a kid, I totally cried. It destroyed me. But that was kind of uh, my first instance of like viewing this thing. I mean, you just mentioned personification, Nick, which I also
Mm-hmm.
I really love that. But I vividly remember feeling emotions for this little weird looking robot that, was nothing like a human. And I just loved the idea of that, stuck with me. And the other movie is called Batteries Not Included. It was actually produced by Steven Spielberg.
Huh.
And yeah, I rewatched this one too. I had my kids watch it with me because I wanted to see if it if it really holds up. And they actually
Mhm.
enjoyed it. It does hold up. I didn't remember it being as sad as it is, but essentially, Batteries Not Included is about this this old building in New York that's about to be demolished, and this couple and all the tenants that live in this building, and they kind of pray for help.
Mhm.
And these little aliens come down. They're basically ships. They're sentient ships. They literally have eyes.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so think they kind of look like little UFOs with eyes, and they're adorable. And everyone in the apartment complex becomes friends with them, and then they work together to kind of stop things from getting demolished. And they actually save their building, and they save the cafe, which I was like, ooh, a coffee link there. Lots of little sentient ships drinking coffee, saving cafes. I That was also a movie that just really stuck with me. I loved the little sentient ships, and so I think the love that was fostered from those two films just I very naturally transferred that onto the ships in Monolith, and
Mhm.
I just really enjoy imagining them as living little ships.
Yeah, I want to say that coming from the previous episodes where
Hmm.
we discussed enemies and also the ships, our ships,
Hmm.
I get the feeling that part of the reason why this appeals to you is just that you find these ships cute and you just want to, you just like, look at these little ships going around. They're adorable and like they are their own entity.
Yes, yes. I like imagining them as their own entity. That's a good way to say it. And they also make really cute noises. I mean, the Noel and D13, they have little like mew, mew.
Or like the ew when they get hit
Yeah, great, great sounds.
and the sound of them exploding when they die.
All that too. I've definitely heard that sound a lot.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
There is one more idea that you in
Hmm.
particular wanted to discuss as to what is the nature of the ships. What
Yeah,
was
this
it?
this was an idea that I've seen discussed many, many times on the Discord. But if they are sentient ships, then how big are they? Um, so this is speculation and like not a literal measuring of dimensions. This is just like a part of my head canon,
Hmm.
and you know, it's not important necessarily, but I do like to imagine them as being like relative to me, they would be like the size of almost like a cat, I guess. Like
Hmm.
I could go hiking in the mountains, and Noel and D13 would be like flying around me and like scouting ahead on the trail. That's kind of how I imagine them. Um, in
I
a like a pet size where I can interact with them, I guess.
I think it says a lot about how vivid your imagination is that I fully believe that you go out walking into the forest and you imagine these two ships scouting ahead of you in your mind.
I have literally done that. And this is a Monolith fan cast. If I'm not going to admit this here, then where, right?
That's a fair point. There is also a third idea that kind of combines our two positions somewhat, which is this notion that the ships that we play as in the game, they
Mhm.
are sentient ships. However, perhaps they used to be pilots before.
Yes, this was a really interesting concept that I saw mentioned recently on the Discord server, and I had not considered this before. A user named agod mentioned it.
Hmm.
Um, so essentially, the way they were looking at this is that the secret ending dialogue is dialogue from back when Noel and D13 were pilots,
Hmm.
and their souls were later put into the ships. Um,
Hmm.
at the end of Monolith, you can see both D13 and Noel's the
Their
ships kind of
souls.
dissolve. Yeah, and their souls rise up into the sky, right? So
Mm.
they definitely do have souls. This wasn't a headcanon that I was super familiar with, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that I want to keep discussing it more with AGOD and other users that maybe have this headcanon, so I can learn more about it and maybe we can revisit it in the future. But I just found that really compelling.
Well, the other thing that I think is relevant to this idea is the fact that, for instance, in the hub, we do encounter other enemies and they do also have personalities of their own. right?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
the blaster and the sentry, and the game kind of makes it pretty suggests heavily that all of these monsters were once souls, then transformed into these creatures in the facility. So I don't think it is so far fetched an idea that, well, if Nolan and D13 also have these personalities of their own,
Hmm.
then they must also have souls of their own that once belonged to someone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would agree with that. Nick, besides Monolith, what else have you been playing lately?
So there's kind of been two or three games that have my attention right now.
Hmm.
I'll I'll try and be brief about them. Uh, One of them is Clustertruck, which is
Hmm.
essentially a first-person platformer. Pretty simple. Here's the start of the level. Here's the end of the level. Get from here to there. The big, the big gimmick of this is that the only platforms you're allowed to touch are essentially moving trucks, and
Oh, I think I've seen this before.
and the trucks just are not very good drivers because they will just crash into each other, into walls, and it is such an absurd premise, and I absolutely adore it. It's delightful. I highly recommend it.
Is it an
The
arcade game, or are you just kind of like score chasing?
It's score chasing, more like clearing it as fast as you can.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So there's no story. There's no campaign
No,
mode.
no. It's just here's 90 levels. Beat them as best as you can.
Okay. Cool.
The next one is a game called Bloons Tower Defense 6. It is a tower defense game.
Hmm.
You basically just control a whole bunch of monkeys with different tools to just pop balloons. That is the entire premise of the game. It's a tower defense game where your towers are monkeys and the enemies are balloons, and that's
It's
it.
monkeys versus balloons.
Yeah, I like it because it has the right level of complexity for me. I
Hmm.
like that it is colorful and just silly in its premise. It's got a lot of personality and charm, and best of all, it is easy to play co-op in it, which I really do appreciate. I
Oh,
need more
wow.
friends to play co-op with, please.
A co-op tower defense game?
Yeah, it's a
Interesting.
lot of fun. I really want more people to play it with because it's so cool.
Huh. I've definitely seen people playing that game.
Mhm.
I'll have to check it out. I didn't know it was monkeys versus balloons, though. I knew there were balloons, but I didn't know about the monkeys.
It's oh yeah, I'll show it to you later. You'll see.
The monkeys are more intriguing to me than balloons.
That's fair. That's totally fair. I'll wait until I show you the hero monkeys. And last but certainly not least, a game that I've not necessarily played a lot, but have certainly meant a lot to me is a game called Thumper.
Mm,
Thumper describes itself as rhythm violence,
mm,
which is not too far off. It is a rhythm game, but it is very unlike rhythm games. I find it very hard to put into words what Thumper is.
mm-hmm.
It's very abstract. It's decidedly not interested in pop music or cheery music, and it is almost designed to try and make you feel anxious and stressed by design.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, it is very intense. It is also minimal on story, but the presentation is so unique and unlike anything else. So every time I play it, I feel like exhausted and tired and so happy with it.
I've seen you stream this game, and I've seen a lot about this game. I haven't played it yet. I should get into it, but even though I've
Oof.
never played it myself, the vibe that you talk about, I know that feeling. I'll never forget it. Even just watching the game, I would describe it as like intergalactic beetle uh, travels down space highway
Yeah,
while fighting interdimensional demons.
yeah. I prefer to call it rhythm hell because that it
Yeah,
kind of feels like you're there.
Yes,
All right.
but it's very, the sounds and music in it are all very satisfying at the same
Mm,
time. So
yeah. Okay. I promise I'll keep it myself short. There you go. So, Malachi, what have you been playing?
I, like millions of other people around the world, have been playing Zelda Tears of the Kingdom when I get home and I'm not too tired at night. So I haven't gotten very far in it at all. Tears of the Kingdom has kind of made me think back on, what I liked about Breath of the Wild. I usually don't like open world games. I find them actually really stressful. And Breath of the Wild was a breath of fresh air, pun intended, that kind of helped me learn to not let that stress me out, not think about the quest, not think about the collecting, and just try to enjoy the atmosphere in the game. And I think Tears of the Kingdom, I'm doing that again, trying not to worry about what I'm supposed to be doing or where I'm going. I just turn it on and kind of enjoy the vibes. And I realized, like, I just kind of like fake nature. Sometimes I like going out in nature for real, but at night and when I'm tired, it's nice to be able to just kind of step into a little forest and I can hear the wind and birds and shoot a squirrel with my bow and arrow and not have to actually go out. Um,
So, it is all
mhm,
the joy and discovery and delight of nature from the comfort and safety of your own home.
exactly, and it's really, the music is very subtle, and so there's just a stronger emphasis, in my opinion, on the sounds of the world and what's going on around you, and that ambiance is really one of my favorite things about the game. So really enjoying that. I noticed, though, I realized when I started playing this that after I played Breath of the Wild and I moved away from it, I beat it. My work phone, I downloaded the item get sound in
Hmm.
from Breath of the Wild, that
Hmm.
and set that as my text alert sound. So when I get a text from anybody at work, I hear that sound. And now playing Tears of the Kingdom, it's the same sound, and it's really kind of the opposite of that peaceful ambience I was just saying. My suggestion to everyone would be, don't put video game sounds as your text alerts. It doesn't end up being good, especially on your work phone.
Or like you go to open up a just, oh, it's another work email. Ugh.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, I want to talk a little bit about some of the music we've been listening to. Uh, I I want to sort of highlight someone that I think might not be very well known. It is someone who goes by the name of Stuart Brown. You might know them as Ahoy, or Xbox Ahoy was their old handle. Now,
Mhm.
weirdly enough, this is a person who mainly is known for making documentaries on YouTube, video essays, are what they call it now. But the
Mhm.
interesting thing is that the soundtrack to those videos, he does all the music himself
Oh,
and then
cool.
releases it separately on Bandcamp. And
Mm.
I feel like he makes some excellent soundtracks, like very interesting, and I like the vibe, and I can just get lost listening to them. And he has a lot of material, but I want to specifically highlight his newest album called Four-Byte Burger. It's about half an hour long, 5 seconds. A lot of synths and keyboards, definitely
Mm.
trying to have a bit of an 80s vibe in there.
I like synths.
Well, you might like this. So yeah, I feel like he deserves a lot of recognition, not just for the fantastic work he does in documentaries, but also his music making abilities. It's really quite a delight to listen to.
Awesome. Stuart Brown. So the album is Four-Byte Burger.
That's correct.
Very cool. I will check that out. Thank you, Nick.
And what about you, Malachi? What has been delighting your ears?
Well, I am currently listening a lot to this band called King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. It's a very fun band name to say, but they're also incredibly talented musicians. They're from Australia. They're incredibly prolific. They've released over a dozen albums at this point. They averaged like two a year for a few years, and they just do all sorts of different genres. But they have a new single that came out from their upcoming album called, I don't remember what the album is called actually, but the song is called Gila Monster. And
Mm-hmm.
if you'll indulge me, I have to read just a
Of
couple lines
course.
of the lyrics because it's kind of a metal song, and the lyrics, if you know me, you'll know why I like this. But it says, "Anon, a giant monster roams, creature of magic, not of home. He didst gobble each hag he found, screams didst echo, a chilling sound. With every Wiccan he will devour, he'll grow in strength and size and power." And then later on, my favorite line is, "So beware, ye witches fair, lest thee be spied by dragon glare." There's just a lot of fun little rhymes about this Gila monster that eats witches, and it's very much, if you watch the music video, it's very much like almost like a song about a D&D campaign. It's really, really good stuff. Highly recommend everybody check it out.
Yeah, I can see why you enjoy this kind of music.
Yeah, it's epic storytelling in a musical form. So
Mm, your favorite.
yeah. But thanks so much for listening to our Monolith Fancast. And thank you again to Arc of Dream, aka Garoslar, for allowing us to use his music and sound effects in this podcast.
Be sure to check out both of his Monolith soundtracks on Bandcamp, both for the base game and the Relics of the Past DLC.
If you have any comments or suggestions for the show, you can reach out to us on our Discord server. We'll post the server link in the show description.
There you'll find fellow pilots to talk with and discuss the show. Thanks for listening. We'll hope you'll join us next time.
This is what you came for, isn't it?
So be it.